Question number 10, Jan Logie.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Social Housing and asks, are the government's social housing changes providing a fairer and more efficient assessment of people's housing needs when Sister Anne Hurley of the Sisters for Mercy says that, quote, state houses in Wiri are now changing hands every few months as successive tenants were evicted?
Mr Speaker.
The Honourable Paula Bennett.
Mr Speaker, the member is confusing the assessment of people's needs by the Ministry of Social Development and the tenancy management policies of Housing New Zealand. However, we have made a number of changes which I believe have provided fairer and more efficient outcomes, such as prioritising families at risk of rheumatic fever, requiring tenants to nominate 3 areas that they want to live in, and increasing the range of housing support products available.
Supplementary question, Jan Logie.
Does she accept, as reported in the Herald, that miscommunication between work and income and her housing needs assessment unit, which she put into MSD to ensure a fairer and more efficient process, has instead resulted in the wrongful eviction orders being given to already struggling families?
The Honourable Paula Bennett.
Well, Mr Speaker, I'm not aware of details around particular cases that the media have been putting out there. What I do know is that Housing New Zealand informs me that they evict people very much as a last resort. When someone is behind in their rent, every effort is made to make contact with the tenant so that they can work out a repayment schedule and to work with MSD. As a last resort, Housing New Zealand goes to the Tenancy Tribunal, where again they have mediation and try to work out a repayment schedule. If there is a miscommunication between MSD and Housing New Zealand on individuals, then I expect that to be sorted out and not the case.
Mr Speaker.
Supplementary question, Jan Logie.
When Housing New Zealand is evicting families, does the Minister know whether they're going to cars, garages, the streets, or to her ghost emergency beds?
The Honourable Paula Bennett.
Well, Mr Speaker, what I know is that it's an absolute last resort for Housing New Zealand to be looking at evicting people. And if they are in general, it is, there's a number of reasons, but the bulk of them are actually for quite serious antisocial behaviour and illegal activity or health. And then the other reason that they are looking at moving people because of a 90-day period is to shift them, which are through no faults of their own, and they look at moving them on to another place. So that might be around health and safety, or the house is deemed to be unsafe. But it is a last resort to evict people out of their houses, but there should be mutual obligations to treat them with respect.
Supplementary, Mr Speaker.
Supplementary question, Jan Logie.
Will the Minister guarantee that no more families will be evicted or threatened with eviction because work and income and her housing needs assessment unit aren't talking to each other?
Mr Speaker,
The Honourable Paula Bennett.
I certainly expect MSD and HNZ to be working together on individual people and ensuring that they are sharing that information. But equally, we need people to engage with Housing New Zealand when there are problems. And by the time we get to the point of we're giving 90-day notices, particularly on the issues of their rent arrears, it is because people have not been engaging with them and have been ignoring requests.
Supplementary question, Phil Twyford.
Is it fair for her staff to leak private information about a police investigation, doing what she always does, character assassination, to divert attention from her failed housing policy?
Order, order, order.
Mr Speaker, well,
I'll allow the Minister if she wants to answer.
it's an utterly ridiculous question and just simply not true.
Order. 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 Mr Twyford. Question number 11. Order. Jenny Salisa.